Usu, a down-on-his-luck young man, dreams of becoming the champion in the brutal and legendary war of corpses, a savage sport where necromancers and their knights battle for supremacy. In a desperate bid, he revives Eleonora, an abandoned corpse, who claims to have been the deadliest mercenary alive. But there are two big problems. One, Eleonora is alive, a fact that cannot be revealed at any cost. And two, she and Usu can't seem to coordinate their movements. Now, the odds are stacked against them. Can this unlikely duo overcome every obstacle, survive the war of corpses, and prove everyone wrong? The war of corpses begins. Ah, so it begins. I remember that battle well. One of those nights when magic hung thick in the air, and the stench of old bones whispered through the Colosseum. A necromancer stood before his corpse knight, his voice low with resolve as he summoned its fury. The knight, clad in decay and purpose, surged forward to strike down its opponent. Across the field, another of our kind commanded his warrior with a single phrase, poisonous tongue in full bloom. And like a venomous flower, the corpse heeded, mouth parting wide as a grotesque tongue lashed out, aiming for Hector's throat. This was more than spectacle. It was war of bodies, of will, of mastery over death. We, the conjurers of forgotten flesh, stood at the heart of the era's greatest sport. The crowd roared as the knights collided in gruesome choreography. Among them, a boy watched with eyes wide in wonder. The brutal dance of death had seized his soul. 17 years passed. In Necromancer City, the boy had become a man, Usu. He now stood over a corpse, arm outstretched, reciting an incantation that pulsed with old power. Light flared, the body twitched, then rose. The crystal embedded in the corpse's chest splintered, and its form turned to stone. Another failure. He assessed it with practiced calm. The balance between muscle and skeleton had been correct. The nervous system reconstruction had improved, yet it had not been enough. He fell silent for a moment. Then, with bitter resolve, he admitted it. Back to square one. Not long after, he was found scrubbing a toilet. A man barked at him for missing a spot. Usu responded too casually, prompting more scolding. So went the life of the failed necromancer. Meanwhile, billboards and broadcasts boasted record-breaking prize money. Who would triumph in this year's war of corpses? With the growing flood of necromancer hopefuls, the city had become a furnace of ambition. Specialized tutoring was available for the gifted. Children chanted loudly under the barked commands of a tutor, fingers outstretched in focus. As their voices rang out, Usu toiled outside, his day a relentless grind. One man yelled at him to pick up the pace. Another called for a delivery, and still more voices called his name, dragging him from task to task. As he walked, Usu read from a notepad, immersed in anatomical theory. Harpy talons, steel hard, not due to mere keratin, but metallic proteins, nerve connections, muscular anchoring. It was all detailed, all memorized. Then a voice shattered his concentration, shouting his name. A moment later, a blow struck his face. A knight's fist had met him. Behind that blow was not the knight, but the necromancer controlling it, her voice sharp, disdainful, and dripping with venom. She reminded him coldly that she had told him to leave the city. Nicely even, she said, before spitting the words at him. Trash bastard. Beside her, another man looked toward Usu and asked if that was truly him, The trash she spoke of. She confirmed it with a sneer, calling him something born in a garbage dump, raised on filth, and existing as nothing but a disgusting piece of garbage. Usu wiped the blood from his cheek and glared at them. The man turned to the woman, appalled in mock curiosity, wondering how anyone could survive on garbage. She went on, unrelenting. His father, she said, had been the same, a worthless man, a thing that wasn't even human, just pure garbage. Looking at Usu disgusted her. She wished he would disappear, and questioned aloud why such a thing was even still in the city. Usu, trembling, slowly began to rise to his feet. Through grit teeth and rage, he declared that he was not trash. No matter where he had been born or how he had been raised, the only one who could decide what kind of person he would become was himself. The woman gave a pout, her expression mocking. So that was it then. He believed becoming a necromancer would earn him acceptance. Without waiting for a reply, she commanded her knight again. The corpse's fist crashed into Usu, driving him down once more. This time the knight didn't stop. It pressed him into the dirt, holding him down. She looked down at him with contempt and said that he didn't even have a knight. 10 years. 10 full years. And he hadn't moved a single one. She mocked the smell of filth that clung to him, told him to stop stinking up the city. Her voice grew colder. She said next time they met she would turn him into actual waste. Usu's eyes locked onto hers, full of fury and pain. And then, from within the darkness of his mind, a memory stirred, a voice once warm. Those same words he had spoken to himself. They had been spoken before, long ago, by another. Raphael, the necromancer who rose from nothing, born in the slums, an orphan with no name and no future. He had entered the war of corpses alone, with no sponsor, no lineage, and no knight but his own. And he won. Not once, but 6 times. An unprecedented streak. He became the world's most famous necromancer, known as the ultimate human. Usu had always wanted to be like him, just once, to become the best, to be acknowledged, to hear the applause of the world, not mockery, to matter. And yet, even now, the echo of a voice, whether from within or beyond, spoke to him again, laced with scorn. Did he really think he could do it? Did he really believe that a piece of trash could become anything more? The scene shifted to a necromancer material shop. Within the cluttered shelves of the shop, Usu stepped through the door, eyes scanning the inventory with quiet disappointment. He walked slowly, inspecting what was on display, then muttered to himself that the quality was terrible today. Nothing usable, nothing worth a second glance. But something just off to the side caught his eye. A corpse. The body of a woman, motionless and laid out among other discarded parts. He stared at it. Curiosity rising, he asked aloud what it was. The shopkeeper, a casual sort of man, explained that those were just scraps for disposal. Usu's attention remained fixed on the human-shaped figure. He asked if that one was for disposal too. The seller confirmed it, adding that the corpse had been on the market for a year and had already been sold 13 times. 13. But no one had been able to get it to move. Each time, it was returned in failure. Usu found that strange. Usually, when materials failed, they hardened like stone or broke apart. Yet this one remained intact. Why? The shopkeeper explained that it simply hadn't moved, not even once. He said it happens occasionally, every few years, a rare type of defective. Then came the offer. Was Usu interested? Since the corpse was going to be thrown away anyway, the seller was willing to let it go dirt cheap, on the condition it couldn't be returned. Usu stared. Something about the corpse drew his attention deeper. He noticed the hand. It looked strange. The seller chuckled. He agreed it was unique, and though he couldn't give many details due to regulations, he shared what he had heard. The woman had been a very famous mercenary during her lifetime, someone who could supposedly smash anything with a single punch. But in the seller's view, it didn't matter. A knight is just a tool, without thought, without ego. Whoever she was before meant nothing. Usu remained silent for a time. Then, without much emotion, he said he didn't need it. A product that had failed 13 times was simply too risky. The seller nodded in understanding. That was fair, after all. But as he turned away, he muttered something under his breath. Words meant to be final. Trash is just trash, after all. Those words lodged themselves deep in Usu's mind. Time passed. Usu could now be seen pulling a carriage. Inside it, the same corpse. He had bought it. He had used every last coin he had left to do so. There wasn't even enough money left for food tomorrow, let alone next week's rent. He admitted to himself that this might be the end. The chances of success were almost non-existent, but still, something in him needed to try. Something in him believed in this one. Trash. No, not this time. No matter what anyone said, they could do it. They would rise together. They would become the best. They would earn the applause of the entire world. In his workshop, the ritual began. Light burst from within the building. In the center of it, the woman's corpse rose. Usu stared, stunned. Was it success? Then came a voice, confused, curious. The corpse had spoken. Usu's eyes widened and he screamed. The corpse screamed back. Still screaming, he stumbled backward in panic. His hand darted toward a butcher knife and he gripped it tightly, pointing the blade toward her. His voice trembled as he questioned what he was seeing. How could a corpse talk? At that moment, the crystal embedded in her chest began to glow. Her arm followed, light tracing its form as she moved. Then she punched. Her fist tore forward, and the building exploded beneath the force of it. In the realm of restless slumber, a figure materialized, familiar, cruel, and venomous. It hurled scorn like curses, questioning the audacity of one such as Usu daring to walk the path of a necromancer. The voice seethed with loathing, condemning his lineage, branding his mother as filth that had ruined its life. The son of trash, it claimed, could only be trash. No matter how valiantly he struggled, it declared he would never be anything more. No one would ever acknowledge him. That cursed voice spat its final insult, calling him a worthless piece of trash before he awoke, eyes snapping open in the silence of the waking world. Breathing ragged, soaked in sweat, Usu muttered to himself that it had only been a dream, the same cruel vision that plagued him night after night. And yet, what a strange thing to say next, that a corpse couldn't possibly talk. How little he knew back then. For beside him the corpse did talk. It muttered bitterly, noting that its punch had missed, only because its right leg was malfunctioning. That should have been his first scream, but alas, it wasn't his last. Panicked, Usu tumbled to the ground, bewildered by the restraints binding his arms. He demanded to know what was happening. The corpse, with the callousness only death can cultivate, turned the question back on him. She insisted he explain what he had done to her body, and promised she wouldn't miss next time. His eyes drifted to the side, to the destruction her previous punch had left. The room, once intact, now bore testament to her strength. After some frantic explanation, the corpse and she finally pieced things together. A necromancer. So he wasn't a depraved lunatic after all, she mused. She glanced about the room, unimpressed, and confirmed to herself that, yes, she had indeed died, with an indifference that should unsettle any sane man. She offered her thanks for the revival, casually bidding Usu farewell and wishing never to meet again. But Usu wasn't done. He called out, pointing out that her left arm and right leg, which weren't originally hers, wouldn't function on their own. Only he, as the necromancer, could animate them. She seemed unbothered by this revelation. He warned her, no matter how powerful she had been in life, in her current state she would need his assistance. She took offense at the notion, then, without hesitation, reached for a butcher knife. And oh, what came next? She lifted the blade, and before Usu could stop her, began to slice through the leg. He watched, wide-eyed, as she severed it without a flicker of hesitation. She declared her name, Eleonora, claimed herself the strongest and most beautiful warrior the world had ever known, and with limbs or without, she would need no help from anyone. Usu fell silent, but only for a moment. Then he made an offer. He would hire her. The words hung in the air, and Eleonora stilled. He had heard rumors that she fought for coin in her past life, a mercenary driven by gold, and given that she had sold her corpse after death, it was clear her debts had followed her even into the grave. He would pay her, he said, fight with him. She found him intriguing, perhaps even amusing. He was right. If the payment was satisfactory, she didn't care who or what she was fighting. Eleonora, with a fire that even death had failed to extinguish, declared that she carried a debt, one so immense, so suffocating it would eclipse anything Usu could possibly imagine. A burden beyond numbers, a noose knotted in gold. 80 billion, he offered. He asked if that would be enough to cover it. She hesitated, admitted it might, but questioned whether he even possessed such wealth. The doubt hung heavy in the air, until Usu interrupted her with a question of his own. Did she know the prize for this year's corpse war? He produced a paper, its ink almost glowing with promise. 100 billion gold. Eleonora's eyes widened. She hadn't realized the prize was so high. Usu, with a flicker of pride, informed her that it was now the most famous sport in the entire world. She admitted, with her usual bluntness, that necromancy had never meant anything to her. She'd had no talent for it in life, and so she never bothered to look at such things. But now he could see the gears turning behind her eyes. So he pressed on. If she, already a rare breed of corpse knight, and he, with his fragile grasp on the art of necromancy, worked together, entering the competition would be simple. As long as they kept her inconvenient aliveness a secret. With her as the mightiest warrior, and he as the mind behind the magic, victory would not be a question of if, but when. Together, they could rise to a status that would echo throughout the world. She was unimpressed by fame. What she did care about was her share. 80%, she asked if that's what he was giving her. Usu confirmed it, grudgingly called it generous. She stared at him blankly, and raised it. 95. Usu froze. Bargaining with the dead was always dangerous, especially when the corpse still had its tongue and temper. He pushed back, offering 85, citing material costs and expenses. 95. He countered with 90. 95. 92. Again, she simply said it. 95. At last, he snapped, cursed, gave in. 95%. take it all. She grinned and consoled him, telling him not to feel bad. She simply knew how to bargain. Then, in true mercenary fashion, insisted they draft a written contract. Words meant little to her. They smiled at one another then. Two outcasts forging a pact not in blood, but in desperation and opportunity. Later, the pair wandered through the streets. Usu asked her how walking felt. She scolded him. He was going too fast. He muttered that this wasn't easy. She complained about the mask she was wearing. He reminded her it was required by law. Human-shaped corpses had to have their faces obscured, at least 80%, so they could not be recognized. It wasn't just about the law, it was about survival. If anyone found out she was truly alive, well, things would become much harder. But she, ever vain, lamented hiding her precious face. He urged her to choose her words more carefully while outside. Nights, he began to explain, usually just... But then someone shouted his name. Usu flinched. The voice belonged to a woman, one clearly familiar with him. She raged at him for showing his face again, threatening to turn him into actual trash if he dared appear. Usu cursed under his breath. Eleonora, puzzled, asked what that was. He told her to stay out of it. He would handle it. The woman's voice turned mocking. So he'd finally succeeded, she said, after more than a decade of failure. Yet the knight beside him looked like trash, ugly, just like him. Still, she declared, watching him be crushed in the tournament would be more entertaining than fighting him now. She'd let him go, for the moment, and then... Oh, Eleonora. She spoke up, calling the woman a skin tag. The woman turned, affronted. What had she said? Usu panicked and begged Eleonora to stay quiet, but she warned him. He was beginning to irritate her. The woman turned back to him. Did he say that? Usu hesitated, then blurted an affirmation nervously. He even repeated the insult. Skin tag! The woman lost her temper and roared that she would kill him. She called forth her own corpse knight. Eleonora, without missing a beat, instructed Usu to support her right foot properly. And then, she charged, rushing forward to meet the incoming strike with a punch of her own. Her name was Kalina, a woman of passable talent. Nothing extraordinary, but just enough to stay a few steps ahead of the filth she so loved to mock. With only a modest flicker of effort, she reaped modest results. And from those results, she carved a throne of self-importance upon which she sat, looking down on the rest like they were insects writhing beneath her feet. She once scoffed at them, those who struggled and strained, calling them losers. She revelled in the ease with which she surpassed them, not understanding that her pride was built on sand and wind. Their effort to her was laughable, her success a monument to her laziness, erected over the corpses of ambition. This cruelty, this habit of comparing herself to others to feed her fragile ego, that was the only true joy she knew. And among all her favourite toys, none brought her more satisfaction than the one she called Trash, a man who tried, oh how he tried, yet never once rose above her, always beneath her, always reaching, always failing. He was perfect for her game. Was. Yes, was. That one word shattered everything. She stood in stunned silence, her corpse knight reduced to crumbling fragments in a single cleaving strike. Its remains fell before her like dust, swept from a forgotten tomb. The necromancer at her side sputtered in disbelief, unable to comprehend the annihilation wrought in a single blow. There was nothing left, no trace. Kalina's voice faltered, her pride bleeding through her confusion. To lose to him! Usu answered her disdain with a calm expression as he and Eleonora strode past, her humiliation feeding the dark satisfaction in his eyes. Kalina lowered her head, her arrogance dissolved into a pool of shame. Usu sported a wicked grin and he walked away. Once out of her presence, Usu couldn't help but remark that the attack had been a stroke of luck, and dangerously foolish at that. Engaging in combat outside of sanctioned matches was forbidden, and if his identity were to be uncovered, the consequences would be more than inconvenient. Eleonora, ever the tempest, snapped back, wondering aloud if he fancied himself her commander now. Usu wisely stepped back, clarifying that it wasn't an order, merely a request. She may have been unparalleled in combat, but he fancied himself the expert when it came to the war of corpses. He reminded her of her debt, one she must repay, and cautioned that careless risks could bury that chance forever. With a reluctant scoff, she agreed to temper herself, for now. Then came the next step. Registration. Usu told her they would need to pass a few simple tests. He asked if she could manage it, albeit with a tremor of doubt in his voice. And so, we moved to the proving grounds. The overseeing necromancers peered at Usu with skepticism. He commanded Eleonora forward. Her gait, a jerky stumble, earned quiet grimaces from the judges. One dared ask if she could at least run. Usu gave the command, and she staggered forth like a marionette tangled in its own strings. It was unrefined, but passable. One of the evaluators muttered that although it was sloppy, she could perform the bare minimum. Another added that the lower ranks still needed bodies after all. And just like that, the pass was granted. Later, Usu stood before a mirror, his reflection clad in the necromancer's uniform he had long coveted. Eleonora's voice curled around him with mockery. Noting his excitement, he, undeterred, confessed that this moment had been 17 years in the making. She offered sarcastic congratulations. How touching, she said. She could cry. But her tone sharpened when she turned to his clumsy control of her body. If he couldn't master her stride, she threatened to sever her own leg and fight without it. Usu recoiled at the suggestion, arguing that while she might overpower a human with such antics, true corpse knights were far beyond such crude tactics. A single leg would be crazy. Then perfect it, she demanded. His every movement was off. He snapped back that her body wasn't his. He couldn't move it flawlessly. Was she even trying to synchronize with him? She bristled. Why should she adapt to him? He ought to be matching her instead. She was Eleonora. Before she could finish, a loudspeaker cut the air. The opening ceremony was about to commence. All players were ordered to report to the arena. Usu dismissed their bickering for now and handed her a covering cloak. For security, all knights were to be disguised upon entry. The arena, aye, what a glorious cesspit, crowded with fledgling necromancers and seasoned vultures alike. Usu found their number, 7508, and took his place. Beside him, Eleonora muttered about the grotesque man behind them, something slithering from his mouth that made her skin crawl. Usu warned her not to draw attention. A scene here could end them both. And then, the voice, the address. It rang across the arena like a sermon from the deepest catacomb. Names, it said, were eternal. Though flesh may rot, a name endures. Some echo for mere years, others centuries, millennia. In this war of corpses, the speaker declared, he longed for a soul worthy of such remembrance. He yearned for someone whose name would conquer death itself. And so he posed the question to the 8,304 necromancers gathered. Were they prepared to fight in this merciless crucible? The answer thundered from their throats. Were they ready to bare their hearts and carve their names into the bones of history? Again, the answer came, louder still. Then, with a cry that split the veil between this world and the next, he announced the beginning of the 145th War of Corpses. The crowd erupted. And now the terms. The first preliminary round, designed to give new players exposure. 20% of them would be culled immediately. The method, random matchings. 2 victories would secure passage. 4 defeats meant elimination. A necromancer in the crowd muttered that 2 wins were all it took. Another confirmed, up to 5 battles maximum. And then came the command. The first match would be between the player standing on the black line and the one directly behind them. Usu froze. Slowly he turned his head. Behind him stood a grotesque figure, laughter spilling from his lips as he rejoiced in the fortune of facing such a cute opponent. He promised to unveil a creation of supreme, disturbing beauty.